Welcome to Flicker Frequency Episode 6, where the frequency is quite literal and the strongman is either a buffoon or a bubblegum enthusiast. 1988 arrives well in the hangover of Reaganism, with a not-so-shiny last year of his term reflected on a savage political transmission. Reaganism becomes alien greed in 1988's They Live. But on episode 5, we referenced how Carpenter was an anti-Reagan Noriega frequency in itself. Let's look at all his 80s movies to find out if he ever boarded this strongman's boat. The Fog. 1980 brought us The Fog. It appears to be a simple folktale, but there's a bit more going on under the hood.
12 o'clock, the 21st of April.
Right as Ronald Reagan was campaigning on a return to American greatness, after the crisis of the 1970s, the Vietnam, Watergate scandal, inflation, the hostage crisis in Iran, Antonio Bay's centennial celebration mirrors that exact cultural mood. There's historical pride and a purported self-exceptionalism that self-recognizes. It is revealed that the town's prosperity has come from the exclusion of outsiders, from violence against the marginalized, from stolen riches and historical cover-ups by the authorities in charge. This maps very neatly into broader critiques of American nationalism. Those were emergent around that time, especially the idea that celebratory narratives about founding often erase brutality.
Our celebration tonight is a travesty. We're honoring murderers.
Institutions lie. The authority suppresses truth. Nationalism masks exploitation, and the past never stays buried. Capitalism only benefits a few. We will see that pattern re-emerge in Carpenter's 80s cinema. These ghosts are not random evil. They are victims of a founding crime. The horror comes from the return of suppressed history during a patriotic time. So while Carpenter probably wasn't making a direct anti-Reagan campaign statement, The Fog fails to sit nicely with the narratives of revisionism that were becoming prevalent. History is not sanitized and revised in Carpenter's movies. It's painful and thirsty for vengeance. Even when it's not as blunt as They Live, no Carpenter movie sits right on the stomach of the harassed political zeitgeist. Escape from New York. In 1981, we had Escape from New York. And our main character, Snake, is a criminal, an enemy of the state. He was, however, a decorated soldier whom the government betrayed, used, and discarded. If we just look superficially, Snake might look just another strongman like the ones that will populate the latter movies of the 80s. He's self-reliant, he's not bothered by government or bureaucracy, and operates under his own personal code.
I don't give a fuck about your war or your president.
But the main difference is on what that moral code actually consists of. Snake isn't immune to death, and we see weigh on him repeatedly. He seems very invested in individuals, not systems.
We were buddies, Harold. You, me, and Fresno Bob. You know what they did to Bob?
When he communicates to Hawk and says the tracker didn't lead him to the president and asks for permission to evacuate, Hawk tells Snake that he will kill him if he tries to leave. Snake looks dismayed and says, "A little human compassion."
Listen to me, Hawk. The president is dead. You got that? Somebody's had him for dinner.
Pliskin, if you get back in that glider, I'll shoot you down. You climb out, I'll burn you off the wall. You understand that, Pliskin?
Little human compassion.
The lack of compassion from authority figures is what he ultimately puts to the test at the movie's end.
Just a moment of your time.
He knows the president has the wrong tape, but he gives him a chance. If the president shows a little compassion, things might have turned out differently for him. But when the president seems more worried about his beard and looking cool than with the lives of Cabby, Brain, and Maggie, individuals that died so he could live, Snake just leaves the president ridiculed and depowered on the international stage. Nuclear fusion, not under Snake's watchful eye. The inevitable MGS paragraph. It's well known that Solid Snake is heavily inspired by Snake Plissken, but the similarities go far beyond aesthetics. In many ways, this applies to all three Snakes: Plissken, Naked Snake, and Solid Snake. They all begin as legendary soldiers, shaped by institutions they eventually grow disillusioned with, gradually detaching themselves from nations, governments, and the systems that created them. By the time Solid Snake becomes Old Snake, he is no longer a patriotic operative. He is just a cynical relic of another era. Kojima will explore this deeply, obsessing over the disposability of soldiers, patriotism as a manipulation tactic, institutions as cold, soulless, and exploitative, the mechanization of military assets, and identity being confused with nation. Kojima took that archetype and squeezed it dry, across decades of a bloated gaming franchise. What was sharp in 1981 becomes paper thin when you try to stretch it over infinite games that are just a chorus inside the game's own lore. Kojima trapped his characters in a decades-long franchise loop, recycling the same corporate betrayal over and over again to keep the software selling. I think I will do a mini episode just showing how structurally similar the blueprint of these games are. Not saying they aren't great. I actually love them, to be honest. But hell, they are literally the same game over and over. And let's be real, even Escape from New York isn't some flawless masterpiece. The plot holes are gaping, and the continuity is completely cooked. The film aggressively flips from day to night without a shred of chronological sense. But despite the technical cracks, the core message holds. Snake isn't a patriotic operative, he's a cynical relic. Even better, Carpenter didn't do loops. Even Escape from LA, the official sequel, is fundamentally different from its origin, more than any Metal Gear Solid game. He hit the frequency once, sharply. Then, he moved the fuck on. He didn't need to clone Snake Plissken hundreds of times to talk about the collapse of human systems. Already, in 1982, he just moved the camera to an outpost in Antarctica and finally gave us what's, in my opinion, a flawless masterpiece.
The name's Plissken.
The thing, I can say that it's a Cold War allegory, because it can definitely be. I can say it's a criticism of McCarthyism and far-right policies. I could also look at McCready the same way I looked at Snake and point out he's a different strongman. I could even take a piece at the ending and state as fact, regardless of the thing being dead or not. That's effing bleak. That's like bleak as fuck. It's two guys, zero survival chances. A bit unsure if they are fucked by the cold, if they are fucked by the weird monster. I could even update these two today. I could talk about Trump. I could talk about modern tribalism. I won't, because I'd rather have this movie just as a timeless, flawless masterpiece. I really think that the thing is not that political. It seems to be more about the human condition, existential threats, isolation, what happens when the invisible thread of human trust completely snaps. It's a movie about humans suppressed of humanity, literally faking it to survive. The thing doesn't just eat people, it studies us. It learns how to sigh, how to look worried, to say, I'm okay guys. It mimics companionship. It copies the signal of being human while being completely void, empty inside. And in 1982, a year that was built on corporate smiles, on political theater, that actually is quite a radical anti-establishment statement that Carpenter actually made there. I think the movie was really good throughout, and the ending is just the natural endpoint of that paranoia-laced movie. It ends with complete paranoia. It's amazing stuff.
Most of you don't know what's going on around here. Hold on, damn well.
Christine is a cool movie. It's where two anti-political zeitgeists of the 80s meet. Carpenter doing King is apex anti-Reagan Noriega frequency. But Christine is about a murderer's car. It doesn't seem that political. Until you actually watch the movie. I consider it a proto-Blue Velvet, where Americana hides hideousness underneath the 50s fetishization. Arnie Cunningham starts as a 80s bullied kid. His attraction to a 50s car gradually transforms him. And when Arnie finally dies, he's a 50s greaser, his mind and body destroyed by toxic nostalgia. The 50s, when the USA was great, are a dark mirror, not an aspirational one. Contrast the Plymouth with the Mercury on Cobra. Cobrati's Mercury is a monument to a sanitized, badass American past. All slick lines, individualistic power, and effortless cool. Now let's look at the Plymouth. 50s aesthetic becoming a vessel of poisonous nostalgia. It isn't cool, it's murderous, and poor Arnie's insecurities are explored to make him a copy of a 50s violent kid. Again we see, this Carpenter, it doesn't fit this boat. Starman. 1984, Starman is a weird one, out of Carpenter's filmography. But see, it's not hard to notice. The only real humane beings in the movie are the grieving widow and the clone from another galaxy. Carpenter deliberately places the narrative on the dusty, forgotten, blue-collar interstate highways of the American Midwest. The people who actually show human compassion to the aliens are the casualties of the mid-80s economic boom. A grieving, isolating working-class widow, truck drivers, diner waitresses, and roadside mechanics.
You gotta help me, okay?
Institutions are aggressive, stupid, and soulless. Again, they lack snakes a little human compassion. Nobody understands the sanctity of life. Only an alien understands the tragedy of the death of a deer. As for deregulation, not that cool when your behavior is going faster on a yellow light.
Look out! What are you doing?
I do know the rules.
Oh, well, for your information, pal, that was a yellow light back there.
I watched you very carefully. Red light, stop. Green light, go. Yellow light, go. Very fast.
The dominant political frequency of 1984 was all about flooring it. Fuck economic guardrails, fuck social safety nets, fuck environmental policies. The time was to be made now. Fuck the future. Carpenter shows what an individual or an institution operates this way. It isn't a cool renegade freedom. It is just reckless, aggressive, and fundamentally hostile to the survival of ordinary people. Humans can't be that egotistical and expect somehow beauty to be shown to them. Big Trouble in Little China. Jack Burton is the quintessential parody of the 80s strongman. The one that descended deeply into the well of the Reagan-Noriega frequency. In Big Trouble in Little China, stereotypes are used constantly. But the only butt of the joke is Jack Burton, whose only reliable trait is his reflexes.
It's all in the reflexes.
It always works at home.
Yeah.
A literal reactionary trait. The real hero of this movie is the wimpy-looking Wong. From looking emasculated in the first scene, where Jack is the dominant force, to reliably prove throughout the movie that he's actually knowledgeable, smart, resourceful, and hyper-competent. All Chinese characters know exactly what's going on. Nothing seems mystical or out of place to them. Only for Jack Burton, who hilariously is trying to catch up, while simultaneously seeing himself as the protagonist of a plot he barely begins to understand. Yes, stereotypes of Chinese people and Chinese culture are there, but the only stereotype that is really ridiculed is the strongman one, with his blow the roof off and get hit with debris energy. I really don't think stereotypes are funny, and even in this film I have problems. But they are insubstantial. The text never makes fun of these stereotypes. It constantly reverts to making fun of the self-centered strongman hero, Jack Burton. This is a funny anecdote, maybe trivial, but in my language, Portuguese, the movie was hilariously translated as Jack Burton nas garras do mandarim, something like Jack Burton in the claws of the mandarin, hilariously reinforcing the self-centered hero that the movie itself deconstructs. Prince of Darkness, 1987, Carpenter went pitch black. Prince of Darkness is where John Carpenter completely weaponizes the concept of the transmission. The ultimate evil doesn't conquer us by force, it infects us through language, data, and biology. In the movie, a jar of swirling green liquid, the physical manifestation of Satan, the anti-god, is kept in a subterranean church cellar. The liquid begins broadcasting massive, complex streams of data that override the systems of the students. The signal literally infects the mind, driving people to madness simply because they understood it. Carpenter treats this evil like a pathogen. The liquid literally sprays into the mouths of the researchers, turning them into vacant, decaying hands for the anti-god. It doesn't matter how smart, righteous, or scientifically prepared they are. Once the fluid enters your system, your identity is instantly erased and reprogrammed.
Excuse me, but I don't...
The infected don't immediately look like monsters. They wander around the dark hallways, mimicking human behavior, just waiting to pass the transmission to the next host. The horror comes from the total loss of individual agency. They become like hive-minded insects. Let's try read this politically. The homeless, maligned by institutions and elites throughout the 80s, are not the source of evil. They are the first vectors of infection. Already socially invisible, already outside the social contract. The scientists spend most of the movie trying to understand cosmic evil. Meanwhile, outside the church, there is a population society as effectively abandoned. The apocalypse doesn't transmit to the elites. It transmits through the ones that have nowhere left to go. The anti-god doesn't build an army. It occupies the abandoned spaces of society. Carpenter's apocalypse doesn't emerge from the centers of power. It emerges from the margins that power forgot. The ending is open, but let's look at it. The imagery of Lisa Blount being our savior, she died for us, the professor says,
She died for us.
is immediately followed by the reveal of her being the actual transmitter of the dream. Some critics accuse the movie of being nonsensical, but I think that those critics might have overreached. They aren't supposed to fully understand it using only common sense. That's not the right frame of mind. You have to fill in some blanks. Catherine foreshadowed her reveal as a transmitter the moment she explained to Walter the Schrödinger cat how it violates common sense. The ending of the movie confirms this. Common sense is violated.
But it doesn't make sense.
Catherine is both the threat and the victim, the messenger and the receiver, dead and not dead. Now she's both the apocalypse and Jesus figure, arms stretched like Christ's, but inside an ominous transmission from the end of the world. The hero being the villain doesn't feel like a rug pull. In my opinion, the twist has all the groundwork done, and it's not only coherent, but actually good. And then there's the recurring, grainy video broadcast that every character experiences when they sleep. It's a tachyon transmission sent backward in time from the year 1999, showing a dark, blurry figure emerging from the church. A computerized, distorted voice states, "This is not a dream. We are broadcasting from the year 1999. You are receiving this digital transmission to alter the future."
You are receiving this broadcast as a dream. We are transmitting from the year 1999. You are receiving this broadcast in order to alter the events you are seeing.
This is the ultimate horror of the signal. The characters are being affected by the future. The dream isn't a psychological manifestation of their fears. It's a literal data packet looping through time. The transmission implies that the apocalypse is an historical fact. It already happened. And the signal is bleeding backward into their minds, trapping them in a deterministic nightmare that they cannot escape. The past was a parasite in Christine, and the future is a deterministic hell here. There is no escape. The Reagan-Noriega frequency of episodes 4 and 5 is still a sea where Carpenter boat won't sail. They live. And this brings us to the ultimate transmission of political rage of the 80s. They live is obvious and blunt. You couldn't really confuse it as anything other than anti-Reaganism if you take the text and the context.
Fresh, vital. The old cynicism is gone. We have faith in our leaders. We're optimistic as to what becomes of it all. It really boils down to our ability to accept. We don't need pessimism. There are no limits.
It figures it would be something like this.
It's a brutal, direct indictment. Mask off. You can't find subtlety in the movie where Roddy Piper is out of bubblegum. Let's deep dive into it bit by bit. John Nada drifts into Los Angeles looking for work during an economic downturn. Right away, Carpenter frames LA as economically broken and unequal. Nada isn't introduced as an heroic conqueror. He's a homeless laborer, a disposable body in the machinery. However, Nada doesn't question the system. He himself expresses belief in America while discussing with Frank.
I deliver a hard day's work for my money. I just want the chance. It'll come. I believe in America. I follow the rules. Everybody's got their own hard times these days.
He finds temporary construction work and eventually ends up in a community camp near a church, where people survive through mutual aid rather than through institutions. The movie constantly contrasts ordinary people helping each other, acting with a little human compassion, while systems are depicted as opaque and exploitative. Nada notices strange pirate signal transmissions, anti-consumerist warnings, and speeches about humanity being controlled. He also starts to notice suspicious activity in the nearby church. The blind priest seems to be echoing the message of the pirate transmissions, and suddenly police seem to be everywhere. Something's up, just invisible and hard to understand for now. Police violently raid the camp and the church. The state's response is militarized and disproportionate. Bulldozers destroy homeless shelters. Police beat on civilians. The poor are erased with bureaucratic efficiency. The movie becomes explicit. Authority protects the system, a system that fails to show a little human compassion. It's funny that in both Prince of Darkness and They Live, the homeless are the original receptors of the signal. The scene works as a critique of the broader 1980s shift toward harsher poverty governance. The movie is drawing on a real and well-documented pattern of encampment swoops and anti-homeless crackdowns that became especially visible in US cities during the 1980s. The broader history of homelessness in the US shows the issue becoming much more acute in the 1980s, and later reporting documents repeated police-led clearance of camps and tent cities as a recurring practice. Nada discovers the church is actually a resistance base. Activists are producing special sunglasses. They've uncovered something important. The glasses are supposed to reveal something to people, to wake them up. Nada retrieves a box of sunglasses in the church. Once he puts them on, the movie fundamentally transforms. The glasses reveal subliminal commands hidden in advertisements, magazines, billboards, televisions, and money. Messages become: obey, consume, marry and reproduce, stay asleep, no independent thought. The glasses do not create truth. They remove ideological camouflage. Capitalism itself becomes revealed as a transmission system. Infectious. Power becomes concrete, physically embedded into the media's grammar. Aliens are collaborators with capitalism. They govern through consumption, media, class, consent that is manufactured, of course. The enemy is internalized exploitation. Inhumaneness in They Live becomes alienness. Nada enters a bank while wearing the glasses, and there he fully realizes the scale of control.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Nada stops drifting passively through the system. He begins actively resisting it. But he has to become an outcast. Aliens permeate the institutions. There's no lawful halt. Nada tries to convince Frank to wear the glasses. This escalates into the legendary heli fight.
Stay away from me!
I'm telling you, you dumb son of a...
Nada is literally trying to force consciousness into another person. The sequence becomes darkly funny because awakening is portrayed as exhausting, painful, and coercive.
I'm sorry, man.
Crucially, when Frank finally puts on the glasses, he immediately understands. There's no speeches needed. The resistance discovered that many humans knowingly collaborated with the aliens. People exchange freedom for wealth, comfort, and a sense of belonging to a higher class. This system survives not just through oppression, but through participation. Some humans know exactly what's happening and simply prefer privilege. The resistance identifies the signal source, a television transmission tower broadcasting the camouflage signal hiding the aliens. The entire social order depends on manipulating perception. When the signal dies, the illusion collapses. The resistance attacks the television station. Most are killed quickly. The revolution is fragile and underpowered compared to institutional force. NADA reaches the roof and destroys the satellite transmission systems.
Fuck it.
He dies immediately afterward, but the signal collapses. Humans everywhere see the aliens for what they really are. Nada's death is almost thematically necessary. In a movie as urgent as They Live, it withdraws the caution of the viewer. Nada did his part, but he can't fight the war. He died. There is no strongman to fight this inhumane exploitation. It's up to us, the viewer, that just caught this transmission, to do something about it.
Power as you take control. Nothing can stop you now. You're moving on.
Hey, what's wrong, baby?
Hope you like this Flicker Frequency episode. I'm not sure what to do next. I actually have a nice way to end this Reagan Noriega thingy I mentioned on episode 4. That there would be a skull cracking against a rock. We'll still get there, but I think next episode will be just a mini episode, just showing how Metal Gear Solid games are structurally like the same game over and over again. Not criticizing. They are good games still, but they're still the same game over and over again. Thank you for watching Flicker Frequency. And we will now detune the frequency.
Stop bleeding, man. You can. I'm trying to break free from everything.